Picture this scenario, because it is a conversation happening in millions of households right now, likely without anyone realizing they're repeating lies that will keep them working until they're physically unable to anymore. You're sitting at the kitchen table with your spouse. You're both in your early 40s. You've been working for nearly 20 years. You're tired. You're stressed. You dream about the day you can finally retire, finally stop setting an alarm, finally stop answering to a boss. Your spouse says, "We just need to keep saving. Max out the 401k. The company matches 6%, so we're getting free money. If we keep doing this for another 25 years, we'll have enough to retire comfortably." You nod. It sounds right. It's what everyone says. It's what the financial advisors say. It's what the retirement calculators tell you. Save 15% of your income, invest in index funds, don't touch it, let it grow, retire at 65 with $1 million, and live off 4% a year. Simple. Easy. Proven. Except, it's not simple. It's not easy. And for most people, it doesn't actually work. You're following a script written by an industry that profits from keeping your money locked up for decades, written in an economic era that no longer exists, written for a version of retirement that isn't available to the average person anymore. You're playing by rules that were designed to benefit someone else, not you. And 20 years from now, you're going to be 65 years old, looking at a retirement account that has maybe half of what you were told you'd need, realizing you can't actually afford to retire, wondering what the hell went wrong when you did everything you were supposed to do. This isn't a failure of discipline. This isn't a failure of willpower. This is a failure of the myths you've been told, myths that have been repeated so many times by so many people that they've become accepted as truth, even though the math, the data, and the economic reality prove they're false. Picture this scenario. My name is John, and I spent way too much time deconstructing the retirement industrial complex, analyzing the myths they've sold us, and figuring out what actually works in the real world versus what works in a PowerPoint presentation created by someone with a pension. If you are someone who's following traditional retirement advice, but you're starting to feel like it's not adding up, or if you're terrified that you're going to be 70 years old and still working because you can't afford not to, or if you've ever wondered why your parents' retirement looked nothing like what yours is going to look like, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because today we're not talking about how to save more money or which index fund to pick. We're talking about the 10 biggest lies, the 10 most dangerous myths about retirement that are keeping you poor, keeping you stressed, and ensuring you'll be working long past the age you thought you'd be relaxing. Let's get into it. Myth number 1, you need $1 million to retire. This is the big one, the myth that's been drilled into everyone's head for the last 20 years. You need $1 million to retire. It's a nice round number, it sounds achievable. Financial magazines love it, retirement calculators spit it out, financial advisors nod sagely and tell you that if you just save consistently, you'll get there. But here's the truth. For some people, $1 million is way more than they need. For others, $1 million isn't even close to enough. The idea that there's a single magic number that applies to everyone is absurd. Your retirement needs depend on your lifestyle, your location, your health, your debt, your housing situation, your hobbies, your family obligations, and a dozen other variables. If you live in rural Tennessee, own your home outright, and live a simple lifestyle, you could retire very comfortably on $500,000 or even less. If you live in San Francisco, rent a 2-bedroom apartment, and have expensive hobbies and medical needs, you might need $3 million. The number is not the number. Your expenses are the number. Here's what you actually need to retire. Enough money to generate income that covers your expenses indefinitely. That's it. That's the whole formula. If your expenses are $3,000 a month and you have $2,000 a month coming in from Social Security and a pension, you only need enough savings to generate $1,000 a month, which at a 4% withdrawal rate is $300,000, not $1 million. My name is John. The $1 million myth keeps people working longer than they need to because they're chasing an arbitrary number instead of doing the actual math on what they personally need. Stop chasing a number someone else decided was important. Do your own math. Myth number 2, Social Security will be gone when you retire. This one is everywhere. Social Security is going bankrupt, it won't be there for me, I'm not even counting on it in my retirement plan. I hear this constantly, especially from people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and it's wrong. Social Security is not going away. Here's the reality. Social Security is funded by payroll taxes. As long as people are working and paying into the system, Social Security will exist. The trust fund, the reserve account, is projected to be depleted around 2034 or 2035. But that doesn't mean Social Security disappears. It means that if nothing changes, Social Security will only be able to pay out about 75 to 80% of scheduled benefits using just the incoming payroll taxes. That's not ideal, but it's also not zero. And more importantly, it's politically impossible for the government to let Social Security collapse. Old people vote. They vote in massive numbers. No politician is going to slash Social Security benefits to zero and survive the next election. Will benefits be reduced slightly? Maybe. Will the retirement age be pushed back? Possibly. Will the system be reformed? Almost certainly. But will Social Security disappear entirely? No. By not counting Social Security in your retirement planning, you're oversaving in other areas and causing yourself unnecessary stress. If you're 45 years old right now, you should absolutely be factoring Social Security into your plan. Maybe you assume you'll get 80% of the projected benefit instead of 100% to be conservative, but assuming you'll get zero is just irrational fear-mongering. Myth number 3. You should have a certain amount saved by a certain age. You've seen the charts. By age 30, you should have 1 times your salary saved. By age 40, 3 times your salary. By age 50, 6 times your salary. By age 60, 8 times your salary. These charts are everywhere, published by Fidelity and other financial institutions, and they're causing massive anxiety for people who aren't hitting these arbitrary benchmarks. But here's the problem. These benchmarks assume you've been saving consistently since your early 20s. They assume you didn't have student loans. They assume you didn't have medical debt. They assume you didn't lose a job during the 2008 financial crisis or the 2020 pandemic. They assume you didn't take time off to raise kids. They assume a smooth, uninterrupted, steadily increasing income over 40 years. That's not reality for most people. Most people's financial lives are messy. You start late because you were paying off debt. You have periods where you can't save because of job loss or medical bills or family emergencies. You make mistakes. You get divorced. Life happens. And these charts don't account for any of that. They're based on idealized scenarios that don't reflect how real people actually live. If you're 45 and you don't have 3 times your salary saved, you're not doomed. You're just behind the idealized chart. You can still retire. You just need to adjust your strategy. Maybe you save more aggressively now, maybe you work a few years longer, maybe you adjust your retirement lifestyle expectations. But you're not a failure for not hitting some financial institution's benchmark that was created to make you feel inadequate so you'd hire them to help you catch up. Myth number 4. The 4% rule is safe. The 4% rule is one of the most widely cited rules in retirement planning. The idea is simple. If you withdraw 4% of your retirement savings in the first year and then adjust that amount for inflation each year, your money will last 30 years. So if you have $1 million, you can withdraw $40,000 the first year, and your portfolio, if properly invested, should sustain that for 3 decades. This rule came from a study in the 1990s analyzing historical market returns, and in many scenarios, it worked. But here's the problem. It's based on historical data from a period of relatively high bond yields and strong stock market performance. We're not in that environment anymore. Myth number: bond yields are significantly lower than they were in the 1990s. Stock valuations are higher, which historically leads to lower future returns. Inflation is unpredictable. Sequence of returns risk, the risk that you hit a market crash early in retirement and have to sell stocks at a loss to fund your withdrawals, can destroy your portfolio faster than the 4% rule accounts for. More recent studies suggest that a 3% or 3.5% withdrawal rate is safer for modern retirees. That's a massive difference. If you were planning to live on $40,000 a year from a $1 million portfolio, you might actually need $1.3 million to safely generate that income at a 3% withdrawal rate. That's $300,000 more you need to save. The 4% rule isn't a law of physics. It's an estimate based on historical conditions that may or may not apply to your retirement. Treat it as a starting point, not gospel. And if you want to be conservative, plan for 3% to 3.5%, not 4%. Myth number 5. You'll spend less in retirement. This is one of the most dangerous myths in retirement planning. The assumption is that when you retire, your expenses will drop by 20%, 30%, maybe even 40%. You won't be commuting to work, so you'll save on gas. You won't be buying work clothes. You won't be eating out as much for lunch. Your mortgage will be paid off. Your kids will be out of the house. Life will be cheaper. And for some people, in some categories, that's true. But for many retirees, expenses don't drop, they shift, and in some cases, they increase. Healthcare costs explode in retirement. If you retire before 65, you're paying for private health insurance, which can easily be $1,000 to $2,000 a month for a couple. Even after 65, when Medicare kicks in, you still have premiums for Part B, Part D, and a supplemental plan, plus co-pays, deductibles, and medications. The average couple retiring today will spend over $300,000 on healthcare in retirement. That's not a small number. Bond yield. Travel costs often increase. When you're working, you get 2 weeks of vacation and you're too tired to do much with it. When you retire, you finally have time to travel, and you do. That costs money. Hobbies and entertainment increase. You have 40 to 60 extra hours a week to fill. You join clubs, take classes, play golf, buy equipment for new hobbies. That costs money. Home maintenance doesn't stop. In fact, it often increases because your house is older and things start breaking. You need a new roof, a new HVAC system, new appliances. For a lot of retirees, especially in the first 10 years of retirement, when they're healthy and active, spending stays the same or even increases compared to their working years. The idea that you can plan for 70% or 80% of your working income is dangerously optimistic for many people. Plan for 90% to 100% to be safe. Myth number 6, your house is your retirement plan. My house will be paid off. I'll have all this equity. I can downsize and use that money for retirement. I hear this all the time, and while home equity can certainly be part of your retirement strategy, treating your house as your primary or only retirement plan is incredibly risky. First, real estate markets fluctuate. If you bought your house in 2005, it might have lost significant value by 2010. If you're planning to retire in 2035 and the housing market crashes in 2034, your plan is destroyed. You can't time the real estate market any better than you can time the stock market. Second, you need a place to live. If you sell your $500,000 house, yes, you get $500,000, but now you need to buy or rent another place to live. If you downsize to a $300,000 house, you net $200,000 after selling costs, which at a 4% withdrawal rate gives you $8,000 a year. That's helpful, but it's not a retirement plan. That's a supplement. Third, selling your house is emotionally difficult. It's not just a financial asset, it's your home. It's where you raised your kids, where you have memories, where your community is. A lot of people say they'll downsize, and then when the time comes, they can't bring themselves to do it. Travel costs. Reverse mortgages, which some people consider as a way to tap home equity without selling, are expensive and complex, and often not the great deal they're marketed as. Your home can be part of your retirement plan. It's great that you'll have it paid off and won't have a mortgage payment, but it should not be the foundation of your plan. You need actual liquid retirement savings that generate income. Myth number 7, retiring early is impossible for average people. There's this idea that early retirement, retiring in your 50s or even your 40s, is only for tech executives, trust fund babies, and people who got lucky with Bitcoin. Regular people with normal jobs? Forget about it. You're working until 65 at minimum. That's false. Early retirement is absolutely achievable for average earners if you're willing to make trade-offs. The FIRE movement, Financial Independence Retire Early, is full of people who retired in their 30s, 40s, and 50s on middle-class incomes. They did it by saving extremely aggressively, 50 to 70% of their income, and by living well below their means. Now, is that lifestyle for everyone? No. A lot of people don't want to live in a tiny house, drive a 15-year-old car, and never eat at restaurants for 15 years so they can retire at 45. That's a valid choice, but it is a choice. The point is that early retirement isn't reserved for the wealthy. It's available to anyone willing to prioritize it above almost everything else. The reason most people don't retire early isn't because they can't, it's because they're not willing to make the sacrifices required. They want the new car, the nice house, the vacations, the lifestyle, and that's fine. But don't say early retirement is impossible when what you really mean is you're not willing to give up the things you'd have to give up to make it happen. Myth number 8. You should pay off all debt before investing for retirement. This is common advice, especially from certain personal finance personalities. Pay off all your debt, even your mortgage, before you invest a single dollar for retirement. Get to zero debt, then start building wealth. While being debt-free is certainly a good goal, Making it a prerequisite for retirement investing is financially suboptimal in many cases. Here's why. If you have a mortgage at 3.5% interest and you could earn 7 to 8% in the stock market, you're better off making your normal mortgage payments and investing the extra money rather than paying extra on the mortgage. Yes, there's risk in the stock market. Yes, there's something psychologically satisfying about being debt-free. But from a pure mathematical standpoint, if your investment returns are higher than your debt interest rate, you should invest, not pay down low-interest debt. This is especially true if your employer offers a 401k match. If your company matches 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary, that's an immediate 50% return on your money. There is no debt on the planet with a 50% interest rate that you should pay off before capturing that match. You'd be leaving free money on the table. The smarter approach is this. Pay off high-interest debt first. Credit cards at 20%, personal loans at 12%, anything above 7 or 8%. Get that gone. Then, simultaneously, pay down moderate interest debt like car loans and student loans, while also investing for retirement, especially to capture any employer match. Once you're debt-free, except for a low-interest mortgage, you can decide whether to aggressively pay that off or invest more heavily. But don't delay retirement investing for years just to pay off a 3% mortgage. That's bad math. Myth number 9. You can work as long as you want. This is the one that breaks my heart because so many people believe it and then reality hits them like a truck. The myth is, I'll just work until I have enough saved. If I don't have enough at 65, I'll work until 67 or 70 or 75. I'll work as long as I need to. The problem is that you might not get to choose. According to Employee Benefit Research Institute, nearly half of retirees leave the workforce earlier than planned. And they don't leave because they wanted to. They leave because of health issues, because they got laid off, because they had to care for a spouse or parent, because their company downsized and nobody wants to hire a 68-year-old. While being debt, cannot assume you'll be able to work as long as you want. Your health might fail. The job market might not want you. Your industry might change. Age discrimination is real and it's pervasive, even though it's illegal. Companies don't want to pay senior-level salaries to older workers when they can hire younger workers for less. If your retirement plan is, I'll just work until I have enough, you don't have a retirement plan. You have a hope, and hope is not a strategy. You need to plan for the possibility that you will not be able to work past 65 or even past 60. You need to save as if you will have to retire, whether you want to or not, because there's a very good chance that's exactly what will happen. Myth number 10. The stock market always goes up. Just invest in index funds and stay the course. The market always recovers. Time in the market beats timing the market. Don't panic, just hold. This is the mantra of modern retirement planning. And over very long time periods, 30 or 40 years, it's generally true. The stock market has historically trended upward. But here's what they don't emphasize. The stock market can go sideways or down for very long periods of time. From 2000 to 2012, the S&P 500 was basically flat. If you retired in 2000 with $1 million and you were withdrawing 4% a year, you went through a brutal decade. Your portfolio got hammered in the 2000-2002 crash, recovered a bit, then got hammered again in the 2008-2009 crash. By 2012, you'd withdrawn $400,000 plus inflation adjustments. Your portfolio had barely grown, and you were in a precarious position. This is sequence of returns risk. The order in which you experience returns matters enormously when you're withdrawing money. If you retire right before a major crash and you're forced to sell stocks at a loss to fund your living expenses, you can permanently damage your portfolio's ability to recover. The stock market does not always go up on the timeline you need it to go up. If you retire at the wrong time, if you hit a bear market early in retirement, the stay the course advice can lead to running out of money. This is why retirement planning is more complex than just invest in index funds and you'll be fine. You need a more sophisticated strategy as you approach retirement. You need a bond ladder or a cash buffer to fund several years of expenses so you're not forced to sell stocks in a down market. You need to understand sequence risk and plan for it. The idea that you can just ride out any market downturn is true if you're 35. It's not true if you're 68 and living off your portfolio. So, those are the 10 myths. Let me quickly summarize what you should actually do instead of believing these lies. 1. Figure out your actual retirement number based on your expenses and your life, not some generic $1 million target. 2. Include Social Security in your planning, but be conservative with your estimates. 3. Ignore the age-based savings benchmarks if they're causing you stress. Focus on where you are and what you can do from here. 4. Use a 3 to 3.5% withdrawal rate for planning, not 4%, unless you have a very high risk tolerance. 5. Plan for your expenses to stay roughly the same in retirement, not drop by 30%. 6. Your home can be part of your retirement plan, but it should not be the primary piece. 7. Early retirement is possible if you're willing to make extreme sacrifices. If you're not willing, that's fine, but own that choice. 8. Capture your employer match and invest for retirement, even if you have moderate interest debt. Don't wait until you're completely debt-free. 9. Plan as if you will not be able to work past 65, even if you hope you can. Assume your working years are limited. You need a more understand sequence of returns risk and have a strategy to protect yourself from early retirement market crashes. Index funds are great, but they're not a complete retirement plan by themselves. The retirement industrial complex wants you to follow their one-size-fits-all advice because it's simple to sell and it generates fees for them. But your life is not one-size-fits-all. Your retirement won't be either. You need to understand the myths, reject the ones that don't serve you, and build a plan based on math, reality, and your specific situation. Retirement is achievable, but not if you're following a script written for someone else's life in someone else's economy 30 years ago. Wake up to the myths, do your own math, build your own plan. If this video made you question everything you thought you knew about retirement planning, if you suddenly realized you've been following advice that doesn't actually apply to you, share it with someone who's stressed about retirement. We need to change the conversation about what retirement actually looks like in the real world. Thanks for watching The Penny Plan, and I'll see you in the next one.